Идем или не идем?
Да, идем.
Да, идем.
Это карандашом вот так пишем. Вот.
Alright, welcome back to class, everyone. Wait, could you repeat what you just said? Welcome back to class. Welcome back to, thank you, class.
Положи.
No problem.
На, пиши, садись.
Okay, what are you doing? Stop that. Please stop. I mean, I know the feeling. I know how it feels to strain your wrist and your neck as you're trying to copy down everything your teacher says. But in these instances, note-taking is often a comfort mechanism and not necessarily a learning mechanism. Scribbling everything down as fast as possible gives us a false sense of progress. Although our hands are active, our mind usually isn't. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 common note-taking mistakes and how to fix them. Alright, mistake number 1, transcribing instead of translating. So as we covered at the start of this video, you should never transcribe your lecture. If you are trying to copy down every single word your teacher says, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. Why? Because you can most likely find the lecture recordings and the lecture slides online. We often rush to take notes because it excuses us from the harder and more important task, thinking. In fact, I argue that many students would be better off taking 0 notes during lecture and forcing themselves to pay attention instead. But chances are you don't want to do that. And fair, you probably should write something down during lecture. So let me tell you a better way to take notes. Instead of transcribing, which is writing everything down verbatim, focus on translating, which is writing things down in your own words. As your professor speaks, avoid the urge to continuously write. Instead, I want you to take notes in chunks. Focus on your professor's words for 10 to 20 seconds, let it digest, and then write the main points in your own words. If you've never taken notes like this before, it's going to feel uncomfortable because it'll feel like you're glossing over the access to later, however, is your professor and the overarching themes and ideas they want to convey. In fact, these are often the ideas your professor might communicate on the spot and in the moment. They might not be available in a textbook or some external themes and ideas they want to convey. In fact, these are often the ideas your professor might communicate on the spot and in the moment. They might not be available in a textbook or some external resource. Here's another way to think about it. Learning is like pottery. You focus on the overall shape and structure first, and then once you have that in place, you can go in and focus on the minor details and patterns to bring your masterpiece to life.
If you're a student, here's what you can do. The easiest way to start like this is to just ask.
Knowledge works similarly. Instead of going right into the little details, you need to create the structure first, and this is often through the key themes and messages and ideas. And then once you have a sense of what you're learning and why you're learning it, then you can drill down with all the minor details to refine your understanding. This channel engaging with your professor's words instead of passively copying everything down is hard, and most students won't want to do that. But you can either actively engage during lecture and trim down your study time outside of class, or you can passively engage and drastically extend your study sessions. Mistake number 2, obsessing over form. Now, what do I mean by this? By form, I'm referring to the aesthetic and the format of your notes. Now, I don't mean to sound like a hater when I'm saying this, but aesthetically pleasing notes are very overrated. If you want to decorate your notes and make them look pretty outside of class, please by all means do so, and don't let me stop you. But do not obsess over the aesthetic while you're in lecture, for 2 reasons. First, the more you focus on the aesthetic, the less you focus on the actual lecture. Embellishing your notes just gives you a false sense of productivity. And second, you'll be in a constant state of panic trying to keep up with your professor. And so again, you run into this issue where you're not actively engaging with the lecture content. Okay, now let's talk about the format of your notes. Some of the very smartest students I know obsess over the format, and rightfully so. They want to make sure that their notes are neat and organized to maximize their learning. But my advice, don't overthink it. Use a format that works for you and run with it. For example, if you don't like Cornell notes, don't use Cornell notes because some academic guru told you that they were effective. Which they are, by the way, but I totally understand why you might not be a fan. Again, what matters more is the process of note-taking itself. For example, are you actively engaging? Are you processing ideas in your own words? Are you focusing on the key themes and messages? That's what matters more. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least tell you what the different note-taking formats are. So let's run through them quickly. Again, if any of these resonate with you, great. If not, keep doing you. First, we have the good old outline method. And this is the note-taking method that carried me throughout high school and college. And the premise is pretty simple. Organize information hierarchically. Hierarchically? Is that how you say that? Use bullets to put main topics at the top, followed by subtopics underneath. I prefer this format because it gives me the most space to work with, which isn't necessarily the case with the second format, Cornell Notes. So for Cornell Notes, you want to divide your page into 3 sections. A narrow left column for cues and questions, a wider right column for the notes themselves, and then a section at the bottom for summaries. The structure is that it engagement with the lecture material, but a drawback is that it takes a lot more time. After class, or maybe even during class, you're going to have to remember to fill out that summary section for every single page. Now, if you're not a fan of writing summaries, then you might be a fan of this third format, the box method. Now, I'll admit, this one is a bit unusual, and I've never used it myself, but the idea is simple. Group similar notes together and box them. This can provide clear visual separation between distinct ideas, which can make studying a lot easier. But my favorite note-taking format, at least the one to study with, are mind maps. Mind maps are great because they reflect the interconnected nature of knowledge. You have a central idea in the middle, and then you have related ideas branching off. And then you can integrate distinct colors with separate areas of the mind map to help with memory retention. But I know what you're wondering. Go hard. Didn't you say you used the outline method during school and not mind maps? That's correct. I used the outline method to take notes during class, but I used mind maps to study outside of class. Mind maps can get very messy if you're using them during lecture, because you might not know when to split a branch into a sub-branch or when to use different colors. That's why I think that mind maps are instead useful when you're familiar with the concept and understand the surrounding landscape. Knowledge, you can then use a to make sense of it and see how everything fits together. You know what else should fit together? Which is why I want to show you something cool that Opera is doing. They've partnered with Spotify to reimagine the way we listen to music while working. And it gets even better. Right now, Opera is offering 3 months of Spotify Premium for free. That means you can listen without ads, download your music to listen anytime, anywhere, and organize your playlist to listen in whatever order you want. You can claim your free trial by downloading the Opera browser and heading to the Opera player sidebar. Just note that this offer varies by country. Now let me show you Opera in action, especially the video pop-out feature. You can detach the video you're watching as so and place it anywhere on your screen, keeping it on top of other windows. This is super helpful for those who love to watch while they browse but don't want to keep switching between tabs. What I really love is how customizable Opera is. Watch this. I can set a theme like Midsummer, adjust the colors, add some subtle sound effects, and create the perfect environment for focusing. Head to the link in my description to download Opera today and claim your free Spotify Premium offer. And now, back to the video. Mistake number 3, ignoring your inner monologue. So you know that voice inside your head during lecture? The one that's like, oh wait, this doesn't make any sense, or wait, how does that work? Capture these thoughts in your and to make your notes much more memorable. For example, as I'm reading, I will add exact thoughts in the margins. If I find something funny, I will write down LOL. Or if I find something weird, I'll say WTF followed by an exclamation. Or sometimes if we're talking that reminds me of someone that I know, or if we're talking about an event that reminds me of something that I've experienced, I will also note that down. The more personal you can make your notes and connect these distinct concepts to your own lived experiences, the easier it's going to be to retain that information. The most important type of annotation, though, in my opinion, is the question mark. If something confuses you, anything confuses you during lecture, even for just a moment, write down a question mark in the margin. And in the moment, not later, not via email, not after class, raise your hand and ask for clarification. Because I promise you, the ideas that you're telling yourself you'll revisit on your own time, you won't. You will probably forget about it as soon as lecture ends. And also, over the course of the semester, you'll encounter more material than you can possibly imagine. And you will not have time to go back through everything and see which parts confused you. Those question marks will be your indicators, and they will guide your study sessions. So this way, you can skip over these self-explanatory concepts and double down on what confuses you. Mistake number 4.
Нескафе латте. Невероятно вкусный. Приготовь, насладись, делись настроением с Нескафе капучино, латте и раф стайл.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the zone and staying there, that feels more like luck than something you can control. So that's why we made Brain FM. It's like a do not disturb setting.
Failing to contextualize. Knowledge doesn't exist in isolation. When you learn something new, it's connected to something you've learned previously. Mind maps are a great study tool. In addition to taking notes during class, I also recommend that you have a mind map that you build out over the course of a semester or a unit. After each lecture, come back to this mind map. Find a place to fit in these new concepts that you just learned. The more connections you can draw between these new concepts and the existing topics on your mind map, the better off you're going to be. Alright, and then mistake number 5. This is perhaps one of the biggest mistakes students make when taking notes. Doing a single pass. Let me explain. No student is going to take perfect notes on their first go. But what do most students do? They take their notes, they close their notebooks, and they don't revisit them until exam time, or better yet, just never at all. Here's what I think you should do instead. After you finish taking your notes, great, put them away and go about your day. But after 24 hours, or even the same night, I want you to revisit what you wrote down. What you'll notice is that some of the stuff might not make sense to you, or some of the stuff you might want to flesh out even further. This is the exercise, and these are the realizations that separate decent students from phenomenal students, because it's uncomfortable. Taking notes is the easy part. Using your notes to test, challenge, and solidify your understanding paper and then try to recite the main points in your own words. Better yet, take your notes and pretend you're teaching that material to someone else. This, of course, is the Feynman technique, which I've talked about in previous videos, and this study method is one I lived by, especially for my social studies courses. The overarching idea here is that your notes shouldn't just be some stale resource that you create once and then abandon. Rather, your notes should be a resource that you revisit, review, and refine over the course of a semester. Y'all, that does it for today's video. If you have a moment, please take a minute or two to leave a meaningful comment and let me know what resonated most with you. And also, if you want to excel in school and organize everything you have going on, check out my Notion template, which is linked in the description of this video. Y'all, best of luck this school year. I hope 2025 is treating you right, and I'll see you again next week.
Вы все еще мучаетесь тем, как запомнить все времена английского языка? А что, если я скажу вам, что главный секрет в том, что носители английского языка смотрят на мир совсем не так, как смотрим мы, русскоговорящие люди. И зная вот этот новый взгляд, можно все...
Some important news. And look, you might not be that happy, but I think it's important you know this. The amount of time you study doesn't matter. Back in high school, I realized there were some students who could study for just 1 or 2 hours and absolutely crush an exam. And then some students might study for 3, 4, or even 5 hours and not fully grasp the material. More important than the amount of time you study is how you actually study. In this video, I'm going to cover some common study. That might be holding you back from an A. Okay, the first mistake actually happens inside the classroom. It's when you're hearing, but you're not listening. And what this refers to is that when someone is talking to you, you're not fully present. You hear the individual words, you have a vague idea of what they're talking about, but you don't understand the deeper message. And this happens very often with students in the classroom. For example, let's say you're sitting in history class and your teacher's talking about the Boston Tea Party. He tells you that a group of American colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships and dumped tea into the Boston Harbor to protest the Tea Act. Now, if you're sitting in class and simply hearing lecture, you might think to yourself, wow, these guys seem pretty rebellious. But if you're actually listening to your teacher and think about the deeper themes and broader implications of the story, you'll have a much stronger grasp on the content. You'll realize that the Boston Tea Party was a catalyst for revolutionary change, that it was a symbolic act of defiance. And these are the ideas that'll help you ace an exam or an essay, not the fact that a random group of colonists got mad on some winter day in 1773. So now how do you become better at listening? Now this might sound a bit controversial, but take fewer notes. Don't rush to write down every single word your teacher says or every single thing you see on the slides. When your teacher says something, pause for a second, digest the idea, and jot down a note in your own words.
I've just finished my visit to the University of Wollongong in Dubai. It's right in the heart of the city. The campus looks impressive from the outside, and even better on the inside. Each faculty has its own dedicated space, and the facilities are brilliant. Everything is there in one place. The teaching staff are so passionate, and if you research them, they're genuine leaders in their fields. I could get to learn under these people. That's amazing. And Dubai is a place that everyone should live in once. It's a global metropolis where incredible things can happen. You know when something just feels right? I think I've seen my own future today.
Have you seen your future today? We have.
Хочешь работать в топовых зарубежных IT-компаниях? Я помогаю людям устраиваться в Google, Amazon и Meta. Пойдем расскажу. Привет, меня зовут Саша Лукин, я работаю в компании Google в Нью-Йорке и сам провожу здесь собеседования. Я обожаю Google. Здесь и интересные проекты на миллиарды пользователей, и крутое комьюнити с офисами по всему миру, и, конечно, просто огромные зарплаты. Лично я всегда хотел жить в Нью-Йорке, и благодаря Google моя мечта наконец сбылась. Хочешь так же? Весь секрет успеха в правильной подготовке. В моем кейсе Big Tech Bootcamp я за руку проведу вас по всем этапам поступления. Мы вместе напишем резюме, получим приглашение на собеседование, максимально подготовимся к их прохождению. Многие ребята из первого потока уже наполучали крутых офферов и переехали в Европу. Стартуем уже совсем скоро, поэтому переходи по ссылке и подписывайся на обновления. В них вы узнаете все подробности.
Do is forgetting to connect the dots. If you treat school like it's one giant memory exercise that simply requires you to regurgitate a bunch of facts and formulas, you're doing yourself a disservice. Everything you learn exists in some context. Every idea is somehow related to a broader theme or lesson that you need to be aware of. And if you can maintain this awareness while you're in But an A+ student might realize, hey, photosynthesis relates to some of the stuff we learned about previously. For example, they might instantly realize that photosynthesis is connected to cellular respiration, that is connected to the cycle of energy transfer within
Я найду. Фигни. Ты не веришь? You sick son of a bitch.
ecosystems, and that it's even connected to the carbon cycle. The A+ student will connect these dots and have a deeper understanding of the content compared to the student who might just memorize these facts in isolation. Okay, now the third mistake is something I've touched upon before, but I'll say it again because I think it's something every student should avoid: staying in your comfort zone. Studying effectively is supposed to be a rewarding process, but it's not necessarily supposed to be a comfortable process. Now yes, you can and should try to make studying more studying with music or studying with friends, but you shouldn't go into a study session just assuming it's going to be super easy or go by in a breeze. Because the reality is, as you're studying, you'll often come across concepts that make no sense to you, and you'll come across formulas and facts that look like hieroglyphics. And this is a good thing because it means you're about to learn something. As you're studying, don't spend too much time reviewing notes or concepts you're already familiar with. Really spend some time figuring out your biggest weaknesses and tackle them head on. And the truth is, deep down, we know what our strengths and weaknesses are. We know the topics that are easy for us and we can pick up in an instant, and we know the topics that might be a bit more difficult. For example, back in high school, AP Calc wasn't too bad for me, but APUSH was a little bit tougher. But I was honest with myself and spent way more time studying for APUSH, even though studying for AP Calc would have been a lot more comfortable. Grammarly is an AI tool that goes way beyond spelling and grammar. It helps with the entire writing process, from brainstorming to editing. It'll generate a handful of topics in seconds, completely for free. As a reminder, we're not using this to write our paper for us, but it's simply giving us thought starters. I like this first one right here, so let's go ahead and choose that. And then the next step is finding sources, but that can get very time consuming. Thankfully, Grammarly can even summarize articles, so we can extract the main points and weave them into our writing with ease. It'll never write your essay for you, but rather steer you on the right path and polish your ideas. For example, with Grammarly Pro, we can rewrite run-on sentences to make them more clear, and we can also replace overused words so we don't sound repetitive. And if you're worried about using AI in school, there's a plagiarism and AI detector as well. They even have Grammarly authorship, which helps shows how much of your essay is AI typed, human written, or AI assisted, so you can have a transparent conversation with your professors. Grammarly is a must-have for all students.
Меня зовут Мухаммад. В этом году я взял Gap Year, и уже этой осенью начну учебу в Корнельском университете. Я закончил международную школу в Халибере Алматы в июне 2023 года, где я обучался по британской программе A-Level. Всего я изучал 5 предметов. Мои интересы лежат в точных науках, поэтому я изучал математику, высшую математику, физику, компьютерные науки и также русский язык. Помимо школьных предметов, я был вовлечен в школьную жизнь, я был частью нескольких волонтерских проектов, академических клубов, а также спортивных команд. Так, например, я был частью своей школьной команды по футболу, а также создал школьный клуб по бегу.
Now on this channel, I've talked about the importance of having a nice study environment, having a study routine, and using tools like Google Calendar and Notion. And while I think it is important to have some sort of structure, I also know it's very easy to get carried away. I often see students who think they can only take notes in a certain format. Students who think they can only listen to a certain soundtrack while studying. Students who think they can only study with a certain set of stationery. And look, while there is nothing wrong with finding something that works for you, and I myself am a fan of trying new things, you have to be adaptable. Having these requirements becomes an issue when you're in an environment where you don't have access to them. For example, maybe you're studying at a friend's house and don't have access to certain tools. Maybe your teacher wants you to take notes you're comfortable with. Study sessions for no reason. For example, many students follow the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of studying followed by a 5-minute break. If this works for you, great. But if one day you feel like you have more energy and can study for 30 minutes or maybe even 40 minutes, don't let this arbitrary rule stop you. And that's the big idea here. A lot of these tools and techniques you hear me and other influencers talking about are simply meant to guide your studying. They're not things you have to follow exactly all the time. Alright, now the 5th mistake is fearing judgment. I want you to think about the last time you raised your hand in class. Now, if you're like most people, you probably felt a little bit nervous. Maybe you were afraid your teacher would judge you or that your classmates would judge you. And while this feeling is completely normal, you should do your best to not let this nervousness prevent you from asking the question in the first place. Learning is a vulnerable process, and you only make progress as a student when you own up to the things you don't understand. And look, I've been there myself. I know it can be a bit intimidating to ask a question, especially if you're in a lecture with like dozens or hundreds of people. But I promise you, nobody is going to remember your question a few hours after class ends. In fact, I don't remember any embarrassing questions my classmates might have asked during my lectures in college, and I'm sure the same goes for them. This advice also applies to more than just raising your hand. It applies to the time you're sitting at home, stuck on a homework problem, and you want to ask your friend for help. It applies to the time you want to ask an older sibling or a parent to explain a topic to you. It applies to the time you want to email your teacher clarifying questions. I promise you, these people in your life want to help you, and they're probably judging you way less than you think they are. The sixth mistake is clinging on to preconceived notions, and this is one I see all the time. I think a lot of students today, after they get a bad grade on an exam or struggle in a class, might just think they're not cut out for a certain subject. For example, someone who struggled in algebra their freshman year of high school might just think to themselves, oh, math isn't for me, or I just struggle with numbers. And I find this sort of negative self-talk can sometimes become a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, maybe the student isn't bad at math. Maybe he just has a teacher who explains things poorly. But because he now has this mindset, because he believes he can't do math, he actually becomes bad at math. This mindset might prevent him from fully paying attention in class. It might make it easier for him to give up on a homework assignment and blame his poor number skills. Look, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I understand that some students are genuinely stronger at some subjects and weaker in others. But don't let your preconceived notions about your ability prevent you from trying in class. I genuinely believe the vast majority of students are so much smarter than they think they are.
Кофе из кафе Голд – это бережно отобранные зерна для богатого вкуса. Он значит больше, чем вы думаете.
And I think it's so important that we have systems and teachers who can help students see their full potential, even in their weaker subjects. So I want you to take some time to reflect and open yourself up to the possibility that your weaknesses are not actually weaknesses. Realize that with a different study approach or maybe even a different mindset, you might be able to do better in math or science or history. I know you have it in you. Alright, and mistake number 7, and this is a big one, disregarding your sleep. Back in freshman year of high school, I would go to bed at around 10 p.m., wake up at around 6, and get 8 hours of sleep each night. But starting my sophomore year, which is when I started taking AP classes, I started going to bed at like 1 or 2 a.m. every night. I even remember going to bed at 4 a.m. multiple times. So yeah, I probably should have prioritized my sleep a bit more, and you're probably aware of all the benefits. Improved concentration, increased energy, less stress, better memory. But there's one study I want to show you in particular. It's called The Causes and Consequences.
Костик, ты закончил писать?
And it finds that students sleeping 9+ hours each night have a significantly higher GPA than those sleeping 6 or fewer hours. Those who got more sleep had an average GPA of 3.24, and those who got less sleep had an average of 2.74. Now, if you want to improve your sleep, I recommend you do a few things as soon as possible. And I've been doing these things myself. First, set up screen time and turn on time limits for every single social media app you have. On your iPhone, you can even set different limits for different days of the week. So if you're a student, I recommend setting a more aggressive time limit on weekdays. I also recommend you stop using your phone at least an hour before bed. A research paper from Harvard says, and I quote, "We found that the use of these devices before bedtime prolongs the time it takes to fall asleep, delays the circadian rhythm, suppresses levels of the sleep-promoting hormone melatonin, reduces the amount and delays the timing of REM sleep, and reduces alertness the following morning." So yeah, get your sleep in. And with that, we have wrapped up today's video. Join my Discord for more homework help, and like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. In front of me, I have 5 of the hardest exams in the world. Some of these exams take years to prepare for, and others you can't prepare for. Some of them test your pure knowledge, while others test your creative and original thinking. And one of these exams, the one that I'm most excited to talk about at the end of this video, has a median score of 0. In this video, we're going to dive into each of these exams and what makes them so special. We're going to look at the structure of these exams, the kinds of questions that are on them, and how students tend to do. First up on our list is the USMLE, the United States Medical Licensing Examinations. Now, I got stressed just reading about this one. If you're one of my viewers who plans to become a doctor one day, I applaud you because it is not an easy process. The USMLE is a 3-step examination for medical licensure in the US. In other words, it's what you need to take in order to become a doctor. Now, the USMLE is different from the MCAT. The MCAT is what you take to get into medical school, the USMLE after you get. And technically, this exam takes years to complete because you don't take it all at once. It consists of 3 stages, or steps as they call it. Most students will complete step 1, which covers basic science knowledge, at the end of their 2nd year at medical school. They'll take step 2, which covers clinical knowledge during their 4th year in medical school. And they'll take step 3, which covers patient management after they graduate, usually during their 1st year in residency. Each of these steps is a very intense and lengthy exam. Step 1 is an 8-hour exam that consists of 280 multiple choice questions covering topics like anatomy, biochemistry, microbiology, and many other areas. If you're in high school, I want you to simply imagine spending the entire school day taking the most intense exam of your life.
Companies of all sizes use BigQuery to uncover new insights from their data, like cost savings, operational efficiencies, and new ways to grow revenue. BigQuery is Google Cloud's serverless, highly scalable cloud data warehouse at the core of Google's unified data cloud. BigQuery data service with built-in business intelligence tools. Get started today with the BigQuery Sandbox or get a $300 credit when you start a free trial.
Пишешь? Или не, ты не пишешь? Костик, Костик, беги.
Got that? Cool. Now add 1 hour because step 2 is a 9-hour exam that consists of 318 multiple choice questions. Oh, and in step 2, we're not dealing with basic science concepts anymore. Now we're getting asked about things like internal medicine, surgery, and pediatrics. Now if you're feeling tired, I need you to stay awake because step 3 is an 18-hour exam that you take over the next 2 days. Step 3 is all about applying your medical knowledge in the real world. It consists of 412 multiple choice questions and 13 computer-based simulations to walk you through different patient scenarios. Let's look at some sample questions. So this packet right here contains sample questions for step 1. And what you'll immediately notice is that these questions are long. I don't think I've seen a multiple choice question this long in my life. So this question right here asks you about a 14-year-old boy. So the JEE consists of 2 parts, JEE Main and JEE Advanced. If you do well enough on the
Костик,
main, you'll qualify for
убери.
the Advanced is well on if you want to get into the IITs. So the main consists of 3 papers, Paper 1, Paper 2A, and Paper 2B. Paper 1 is required of all candidates and tests them on their knowledge of physics, math, and chemistry. 2A and 2B are optional depending on what you want to study. Each paper is a 3-hour exam that consists of multiple choice questions and numerical questions. Now JEE Advanced, on the other hand, only consists of 2 papers.
Костик,
Each paper
сядь.
is a 3-hour online exam that consists of numerical questions and multiple choice questions that focus on physics, math, and chemistry. So now how difficult is the JEE? Well, to give you some perspective, 1.5 million students take the main each year, and only
Костик.
10%
Сядь!
qualify.
Костик!
And then of the people who take advanced, only 25% of them qualify and get into an IIT. In other words, roughly 2.5% of the original test takers. As former IIT Delhi director Ram Gopal Rao once said, the exam is tricky and complicated because it is designed to eliminate people just to see math question on a practice SAT exam. What is 10% of 470? Now, to be fair, the digital SAT is adaptive, meaning the questions do get harder, but this comparison is still hilarious. Anyways, let's take a look at a couple more math questions.
9 из 10 женщин совершают одну и ту же ошибку. Представь, что ты на свидании. Атмосфера легкая, уютная, и вдруг он
We have some algebra, we have some geometry, we have some probability, and actually, let's try to answer this question right here. A pair of dice is thrown 5 times. For each throw, a total of 5 is considered a success. If the probability of at least 4 successes is k over 3 to the 11th, then k is equal to what? 82, 123, 164, or 75? I actually want you to pause this video and try to solve this problem yourself. Okay, so first we have to figure out the probability of a success. That is, the probability that a pair of dice sums to 5. We can roll a 1 and a 4, a 2 and a 3, a 3 and a 2, or a 4 and a 1. That's 4 possible ways out of 36 total, meaning that our probability of success is 1/9, and our probability of failure is 8/9. Now let's call these values P and Q. Now the question is asking us about the probability of at least 4 successes. So in other words, the probability of 4 successes or 5 successes. And to get that value, we'll add the probability of 4 successes to the probability of 5 successes. Now to calculate those two probabilities, we have to calculate the binomial distribution formula, which I will not dive into here. But if we simply plug the numbers in, we get that the probability of at least 4 successes is 5 choose 4 times p to the 4 times q, plus 5 choose 5 times p to the 5th, which gives us 41 over 3 to the power of 10, which is equal to 123 over 3 to the power of 11, meaning that k equals 123, so the answer is 2. Now we glossed over a lot of the math there, but I just wanted to show you how involved these questions can get. 2, by the way. An example of physics, electromagnetism, digital electronics, fluid dynamics. These questions span almost every major area of physics. And same goes for the chemistry questions. Right on the first page we have solid state chemistry, electrochemistry, organic chemistry. These questions make AP Chem seem not too bad. And before we jump onto the next exam, let me show you some JEE advanced questions as well. Like JEE Main, this exam covers math, physics, and chemistry, though as expected, the questions are a lot trickier. Speaking of tricky questions, next up we have the Gaokao. Whereas the JEE is India's undergraduate admission exam, the Gaokao is China's. Held in June every year, the Gaokao is a 9-hour exam taken by 13 million high school students over the course of 2 to 3 days. The exam focuses on Chinese, math, and a foreign language, and students must choose between the arts track or the science track. The arts track will further test examinees on history, political science, and geography, whereas the science track will test them on physics, chemistry, and biology. Now what makes the Gaokao so difficult? Well, unlike the SAT, which has multiple administrations throughout the year, the Gaokao is only held once per year. Most Chinese students will only have one shot to take this exam, unless they want to delay the onset of their college education, like this 55-year-old man who has taken the Gaokao 26 times. And the scores these students receive directly influences the colleges they'll get into. Unlike in the US, where we have a holistic admissions process, meaning that admissions officers will look at the whole package instead of just test scores, Chinese universities focus just on the numbers. So as expected, this exam spurs a heavy amount of stress and competition between classmates. Many students, particularly those from distant
Костик, пиши. Костик. Пиши. Костик. 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 Костик, вымотать ручками. Не балуйся, Костик! Подбери нормально. Костик, пиши. Костик, пиши.
Пишу я.
Точно?
Точно.
Костик. Костик, не балуйся.
Хочется слушать трек снова и снова? Со Spotify Premium ты сможешь скачивать любимую музыку и ставить ее на повтор, слушать треки без рекламы и включая их в нужном порядке. Чтобы узнать больше, нажми на баннер.
Костик, ты почему... Костик! Быстрее все закидывай и продолжай писать.
пишешь?
Кать, что тут надо делать? Где фи? Вот. Фи. Фи. Султан Бимба.
Надо разделить. Там ничего не надо. Он все равно приклеит к тебе в тетрадку. Раздели. Ну все, просто делай задание.
Как?
Ну, подели на слоги карандашиком.
Это как?
Ты это делал уже.
Ну, покажи.
Сколько слогов в слове лапа?
2.
Ну, поставь там палочку между двумя слогами. Какой первый слог?
Вот тут
Какой, нет, какой это?
лапа.
Какой первый слог?
Лапа.
Какой первый слог?
Лапа.
Какой первый?
Лапа.
Костик первый.
Лапа. Т.
Костик, сколько там слогов?
Кот.
Костик,
Лапа.
сколько слогов в слове лапа?
3. 2.
Костик, не придуривайся.
2.
Какой первый слог?
2.
Какой первый слог?
Лапа.
Какой второй слог?
Паук.
Костик, сам сейчас делать будешь.
Лапа, паук.
Костик, сколько здесь слогов в слове лапа?
2.
Какой первый из них?
Ла.
Поставь палочку после ла.
Вот так.
Да, и так все остальное сделай.
Паук. 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 Медведь.
Ты закончил? Сколько слогов в слове телевизор?
2.
Нет.
Телевизор. Телевизор.
Телевизор.
Телевизор.
Сколько гласных в слове телевизор?
7. 7.
Нет, посчитай, сколько гласных.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Нет. Сколько
Один.
гласных?
4.
Значит, слогов должно быть 4. И там еще несколько ошибок.
Где еще ошибка?
Вот это стери,
Где?
которую ты на он начертил.
Вот тут?
Да, вот эту стери. Вообще поаккуратнее черти. Ты чё мне палку стукнул? Костик, сядь на стул. Сядь поближе. Сколько слогов в слове стирка? Костик, сколько слогов в слове стирка?
2.
Какие?
Стирка.
Нет.
Стирка.
Да. Поменяй палку.
Вот. Поменять, чтобы...
Костик, сядь. Ты... Вот. Да. Не надо делать ее такой жирной. Сколько слогов в слове вилка?
Вилка.
Да, поменяй палочку. Вот здесь палку чуть-чуть ровнее сделай. Что-то зазочку. Нет, стери нормально. Стери, понятно. Ты стирать не умеешь. Теперь начерти ровно. Костик, сядь на стул. Костик, сядь за стул. Пододвинь стул. Пододвинь стул. Начерти ровно.
Вот тут
Нет. И сколько здесь слогов?
2.
Каких?
Лиза.
Да.
Вот тут
Да. Вот. Вот здесь стери. Костик, вот здесь стери.
вот тут
Да. Сколько здесь слогов?
тройка.
Сколько здесь гласных?
Тройка. Стройка. Стройка.
Сколько здесь гласных букв?
6.
Гласных, Костик, гласных.
1.
Гласных.
3.
Гласных.
4.
Костик, сколько здесь гласных букв? Костик, С гласная, Т гласная, Р гласная, О гласная, О. И краткая гласная? Нет. К гласная, А гласная. Вот, 2 гласных. Сколько здесь слогов?
2.
Каких? Подожди, сначала...
Стройка.
Да. Вот здесь стери.
Чайка.
Стери. Костик, стери.
Вот тут.
Нет, Костик, сначала стери.
А потом
Да.
вот тут.
Да.
Вот так.
Да. Это что?
Снеговик.
Стери эту палку. И вот эти. И вот эту заодно.
Вот это.
Вот эту ручка и снеговик стери. Ручку стери. Ты как-то странно стираешь. Сколько гласных в слове снеговик?
2.
Нет, посчитай.
1, 2.
С какая?
Нет.
Н гласная?
Нет. Нет.
Е гласная?
Нет.
Е гласная?
Да.
Да. Г
3.
гласная?
3 классно.
Да, 3 гласных. Значит, сколько слогов?
3.
Какой первый слог?
Снег.
Да. Второй? Нет.
Ой.
А, нет, не снег. Какой первый слог?
Снег.
Да. Какой второй слог?
Го.
Да.
Вик.
Да. Сколько гласных в слове ручка?
2.
Сколько слогов в слове?
2.
Да. Каких?
Кручка.
Нет.
Кручка.
Да.
Еще что-то надо поменять.
Так, дай посмотрю нормально.
Фонарь. Фонарь.
Кот, лапа,
Фонарь.
паук, стирка,
фонарь?
вилка, медведь, коньки, телевизор, Лиза, стройка, чайка, фонарь, снеговик, ручка, все.
Правильно.
Да. знаем, что ныне лежит на весах, и что совершается нынче. Мужество пробило на наших часах, и мужество нас не покинет. Не страшно под пулями мертвыми лечь, не горько остаться без крова, и мы храним тебя, русская речь, великое русское слово. Свободным и чистым тебя пронесем, и внукам дадим, и от плена спасем навеки. Знаем, что ныне лежит на весах, и что совершается ныне.
С премиум ничто не будет отвлекать тебя от музыки. Слушай миллионы треков без рекламы, скачивай плейлисты и включай их офлайн. А еще ты сможешь включать музыку в любом порядке и скипать сколько угодно. Полная свобода действий. Чтобы узнать больше, нажми на баннер.
Блин. И жена. Сапа. Дауэс. Влев. Линша. Каранасилька. Куран. Жила. Тапков. Крыс. Тебе. Конакшай. Дине. Шиноктору. Кру. Байкал. Шангас. Табу. Скилде. Гелда. Голос. Качество. Часть. Беглый. Индустриальный. Степень. Доход. Находчивость. Чакра. Состав. Темнота. Пластик, ты куда залез? Здесь. И подними, что там на полу валяется.